At 2:14 local time, a $4.3 million SM-6 interceptor cleared the vertical launch cells of the USS Carney in the Persian Gulf. But this Mach 3.5 missile wasn't aiming for an enemy warship. It was firing blindly into a geopolitical trap, aiming to execute a surgical amputation on a civilian freighter, while the real threat was slipping through the acoustic shadows 50 miles away. To understand why a $4 million interceptor was fired seemingly blind into the dark, we have to rewind exactly 2 minutes. The Chinese-flagged freighter Zhenhua 28, suspected of carrying a lethal payload of YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles, is cutting heavily through the waves toward Iran. Providing its shadow is the Type 055 Nanchang, a 13,000-ton behemoth of the PLA Navy acting as an armed escort. The geopolitical geometry shatters just 20 hours into a fragile ceasefire. The Nanchang plays its hand openly, painting the USS Carney with a hard S-band and X-band fire control radar lock. It is the ultimate kinetic provocation, a digital gun pointed directly to the head. Yet, the American destroyer does not answer with steel. Instead, the tactical action officer retaliates across the electromagnetic spectrum. The Carney activates its AN/SLQ-32V6 electronic warfare suite, erecting a devastating wall of digital white noise designed to crush the Chinese cruiser's targeting frequencies. But the Nanchang does not merely absorb the jamming, it instantly initiates a Layer 2 engagement. From its decks, a ghost swarm of miniature, sea-skimming stealth UAVs is launched into the pitch-black Gulf. Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Carney, the pristine tactical picture devolves into chaos. The billion-dollar Spy-1 radar watches helplessly as a single primary blip undergoes a terrifying digital fission, splitting into 40 erratics, overlapping phantom tracks. The state-of-the-art Aegis combat system is essentially being forced to find a needle in a digital haystack, but the adversary has just gleefully dumped 10 tons of fake plastic needles into the pile. As the algorithms begin to panic, human ingenuity takes over. The American commander rapidly overrides the compromised radar. He calls for a sensor fusion pipeline via data link from 2 F-35C stealth fighters, loitering completely invisible at 15,000 feet. The pilots do not rely on radar waves that can be spoofed. They engage their electro-optical targeting systems, EOTS, to look right through the electronic snow, hunting for the one thing in physics that cannot be faked: the colossal, glowing thermal signature erupting from the freighter's massive diesel exhaust stacks. The true target is instantly isolated from the ghost swarm. The exact coordinates are fed back to the destroyer. The weapon prompt turns green, and the SM-6 is finally unleashed. The moment the two SM-6 multi-role interceptors roar out of the USS Carney's vertical launch cells, they carry a lethal secret. Their 140-pound blast fragmentation warheads have been electronically saved. The fuses are dead. Why risk an uncontrolled secondary explosion on a 40,000-ton cargo behemoth? At a terminal velocity of Mach 3.5 exceeding 4,000 kilometers per hour, chemical explosives become unnecessary liabilities. The pure kinetic energy of the remaining 800-pound airframe and depleted rocket motor slamming downward at that speed carries the destructive force of a runaway freight train crashing into a cliff face. The United States doesn't want to create a brilliant fireball on the ocean. They want to use a kinetic scalpel to execute a surgical amputation of the adversary's central nervous system. On the bridge of the Type 055 cruiser Nanchang, the inbound missile alarms shriek relentlessly. Knowing that his automated air defense grid is blinded by the ghost swarm of UAVs, the Chinese commander makes a ferocious, survival-driven decision. Unable to shoot them down, he plays his hand using basic physics. A hard rudder command is issued. The 13,000-ton machine surges forward, tearing through the heavy swells of the Persian Gulf, dragging its titanium steel hull to block the flight path. The Nanchang turns itself into a colossal meat shield, willing to absorb the impact to protect the freighter Zhenhua 28. But the arrogance of muscle suddenly becomes laughable in the face of spatial geometry. Instead of sea-skimming to slam into the cruiser's flank like conventional anti-ship missiles, the two SM-6s vault straight into the stratosphere. From 15,000 feet up, The F-35C pilots, acting as the quarterbacks, continuously stream mid-course correction data packets into the missile's brains. Reaching the apex of their trajectory, the scalpels begin their dive. They plunge toward the ocean at a steep 70-degree angle, grazing right over the Nanchang's radar masts, reducing the 13,000-ton steel wall to a hopeless roadblock. The devastation unfolds without a single spark of fire. The first SM-6 punches through the aft steel deck of the Zhenhua 28 with the ear-splitting shriek of crushed metal, utterly obliterating the rudder assembly and snapping the propeller shaft. Exactly 2 seconds later, the second missile impales the heart of the engine room. The massive kinetic energy shatters the diesel engine blocks and rips open the boiler bulkheads. A highly pressurized cloud of superheated steam erupts violently from the hull, instantly killing the ship's entire electrical grid. Mission kill. The surgery is complete. The freighter is completely paralyzed, dead in the water, yet absolutely refuses to sink. The final receipt of warning doesn't come from a missile. Seeing the asset it was protecting reduced to a cripple, the cruiser Nanchang is forced to throttle back. At that exact moment, the two F-35C stealth fighters suddenly pitch their noses down, dropping to an extreme altitude of 500 feet. The American pilots slam the throttles, engaging their afterburners, tearing the sound barrier apart right over the roof of the Chinese vessel's bridge. The overpressure from the sonic boom strikes the deck like an invisible sledgehammer. The Nanchang's blast-resistant ballistic windows do not shatter, but violently warp inward, spiderwebbing with a deafening crack under the sheer atmospheric compression. Inside the bridge, the 150-decibel acoustic shockwave drops crew members to their knees, blood trickling from ruptured eardrums. It is a $120 million kinetic warning, delivered not through radio waves, but through sheer atmospheric violence. We own the geometry of this water, and we can touch you whenever we want. Thick smoke from the shattered engine room of the Zhenhua 28 continues to billow into the night sky, choking the air with the stench of diesel. The colossal vessel is now nothing more than a crippled, drifting carcass. From the airspace above, the rhythmic thud of rotor blades shreds the darkness. An MH-60R Seahawk helicopter swoops in, kicking fast ropes down onto the cluttered deck. A Navy SEAL boarding team descends with lightning speed. Darkness envelops them. The only sound is the groaning of twisted metal yielding to the heavy swells of the Persian Gulf. The moment the tactical team approaches the companionway leading to the bridge, the first trap is sprung. A steel door kicks open. 12 private military contractors, PMCs, clad in tactical gear, open fire. Tracers from QBZ-95 assault rifles rip through the blackness, sparking violently against the bulkheads. The mercenaries are hoping for a traditional, blood-soaked firefight, but Navy SEALs don't play dice with ballistics. They respond with the absolute, overwhelming force of acoustic physics. 3 flashbang grenades are rolled around the blind corner. Bang. The compressed detonations generate a devastating 170 decibels of sound pressure, accompanied by millions of candle power of blinding light. Within the confined space of the corridor, the shockwave completely collapses the adversary's vestibular systems and retinas. The 12 mercenaries are instantly plunged into an absolute visual and auditory whiteout for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds is more than enough. Under the cover of total blindness, the SEALs glide forward like phantoms. Their suppressed SIG MCX rifles spit rounds with surgical precision not to kill, but to permanently pin the guards against the steel deck. 4 minutes from the moment boots hit the deck. Zip ties are pulled tight, clean, invisible, 0 casualties. But as they advance to the primary objective, the perfection of their tactics suddenly twists into a nightmare. Hydraulic bolt cutters snarl, snapping the lock off the hot container the exact unit U.S. intelligence guaranteed was hiding the YJ-18 cruise missile canisters. The heavy steel doors swing wide open. Tactical flashlights sweep across the 20-foot stretch of pitch-black space. There are no hypersonic missiles. There is no scent of solid rocket propellant. What greets the boarding team are thousands of cardboard boxes filled with medical gauze, intravenous saline, and tens of thousands of backup lithium-ion battery packs stacked to the ceiling. Command, this is lead element, negative on kinetic assets. I repeat, no missiles found. This is a humanitarian shipment. The moment the SEAL officer reads the hazard warnings on the lithium blocks, a cold chill runs down his spine. The human brain instantly connects the variables, solving the enemy's venomous chemical equation. What would have happened if, 15 minutes earlier, the commander of the USS Carney hadn't used a kinetic scalpel, but instead ordered a standard high-explosive HE fragmentation warhead? The thousands of degrees of heat from the blast would have instantly breached the container, triggering an unstoppable thermal runaway across tens of thousands of lithium-ion cells. The freighter would have mutated into a colossal chemical torch, burning so fiercely in the open ocean that no amount of seawater could extinguish it. If that had happened, by the next morning, the front pages of global media would be flooded with high-definition footage captured from the adversary's pre-positioned hidden drones, bearing a devastating headline: U.S. Navy massacres civilian guards and incinerates innocent medical relief ship. The enemy never intended to use this vessel to shoot at America. They used it to paint America as the villain. The decision to surgically shear the rudder with kinetic energy instead of explosives had inadvertently saved the Fifth Fleet from a catastrophic PR disaster. Yet, just as they exhale, believing they have survived the surface trap, the true deadline of death is silently slipping away at the bottom of the ocean. While the entire C4ISR neural network of the U.S. Fifth Fleet is hemorrhaging its data bandwidth to analyze the smoking decoy on the surface, the true apocalypse is quietly slipping away. 50 miles south, far from the blinding flares and the roaring helicopters, a passive sonobuoy dropped hours earlier by an American P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft detects a transient whisper in the abyss. It is a faint, rhythmic, low-frequency acoustic pulse. It is not the sound of a surface vessel. It is the distinct, low-frequency transient of a primary coolant pump resonating through the steel pressure hull. The terrifying reality hits the tow inside the USS Carney like a physical blow. The YJ-18 cruise missiles were never loaded into the shipping containers. They had been covertly loaded directly into the 533mm forward torpedo tubes of an Iranian Kilo-class diesel-electric submarine days earlier. The Zhenhua 28 was nothing more than a 40,000-ton electromagnetic lightning rod designed to force every American radar and optical sensor to look up. Meanwhile, the real threat is bottom-hugging. Unburdened by external drag and operating in total acoustic silence, the Kilo is crawling along the shallow, jagged floor of the Omani coastline. Brilliantly weaponizing the ocean's thermocline layer, a sharp temperature gradient that physically bends and traps sonar waves to act as an impenetrable acoustic invisibility cloak. Realizing they have been completely outplayed, the commander of the USS Carney screams for a hard starboard turn. The destroyer's massive General Electric LM-2500 gas turbines roar to life. The ship's bow lifts, churning the pitch-black water into a violent froth as the 9,000-ton Predator tries to pivot and sprint south to hunt the submarine. But the Chinese cruiser, Nanchang, is not finished. Despite operating with a shattered bridge, bleeding crewmen, and a compromised combat system, the Chinese commander executes a maneuver of absolute suicidal brilliance. He slams his throttles forward. The 13,000-ton behemoth violently surges ahead, deliberately throwing its titanium-reinforced hull directly across the Carney's bow. It is the ultimate mechanical blockade. The Nanchang transforms from a guided missile cruiser into a moving geographical wall. If the American helmsman holds his pursuit course for even 5 more seconds, the two metallic leviathans will tear into each other in what would instantly become the most catastrophic mechanical collision in modern naval history. The Nanchang doesn't need to fire a single bullet, nor does it need an active radar. It simply weaponizes its colossal mass to force the U.S. Navy into a high-stakes game of maritime chicken, a lethal standoff where the first to blink loses everything. And the Americans are forced to blink. To avoid snapping his ship in half, the Carney's commander orders an emergency engine reversal. The American destroyer shudders violently, killing its pursuit momentum and drifting helplessly in the churning wake of the Chinese cruiser. The Nanchang sacrifices its structural integrity and its pride to buy exactly what it was designed to buy: 2 minutes. Deep below the surface, The Iranian Kilo-class submarine utilizes those precious 120 seconds to glide silently past the 1-2 nautical mile sovereign boundary, vanishing into the protected territorial waters of Iran. The geopolitical red line is crossed. The U.S. Navy cannot fire without triggering a full-scale regional war. The intercept mission completely collapses. Dawn breaks over the Persian Gulf, casting its first light on the crippled freighter still choking the surface with smoke. Tactically, the crew of the USS Carney, the F-35C stealth pilots, and the SEAL boarding team executed a flawless 10 out of 10 masterclass in optical, kinetic, and close-quarters warfare. The American war machine did not commit a single physical miscalculation, but they solved the wrong equation. China happily sacrificed a rusted hull and a few thousand lithium-ion batteries to purchase the perfect pretext. The very next morning, citing the absolute need to protect the freedom of navigation for humanitarian shipments, Beijing officially deploys a permanent naval task force straight into the Persian Gulf, accompanied by a 9-year lease for a deep-water naval fortress at Bandar Abbas. In the era of multi-domain warfare, the most dangerous weapon is not a Mach 3.5 hypersonic missile. It is the ability to weaponize the enemy's own gun barrel to print your geopolitical building permit. Now, if you want to continue following the strategic strikes of Operation Epic Fury, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next update. Military calculus. Understand the tech and strategy that write history. Goodbye.